Welcome to another episode of Manny's on Money. And today we're going to talk about a big idea that I had. And I'll walk through why I got sparked for this big idea and why I think it potentially could be a big trade for us and for me personally. And so it really sparked off with what was happening during the pandemic. So my wife, she was feeling a little ill. Obviously, we're in a shutdown. And so she couldn't go to the doctor. And I said to her, hey, just call up the doctor. Maybe you can just talk to her over the phone. And she's like, nah, my company has this service called Telemedicine. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she goes online, fills all the information out, and puts in the requirements and said, hey, this is what I'm looking for, blah, blah, blah. Within about 15 minutes or so, her appointment was booked, and in an hour, actually, it worked out that there was a spot available. So she popped on to the call, did FaceTime or a webcam with the doctor. They talked about like her symptoms, and she goes through this. She's like, I'm feeling this, so this X is happening to me, blah, 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 blah. He's like, okay, I think you need antibiotics. And she's like, okay, can you write a prescription for me? He's like, yeah. And then he's like, I'll even send it to your local pharmacy to get filled out. And boom, there you go. She pops down to the local pharmacy, grabs a prescription. 5 days later, 7 days later, whatever was bugging her is cleared up. And I was like, damn, that's pretty seamless experience. And I was like, why is it so easy? This is why wouldn't everyone be using this in the future? And so, we started having a conversation. She's just like, what the behavior post-pandemic and just in general now leads to convenience. And I was like, yeah, we are basically that use case. And I think a lot of Canadians, Americans, and North Americans in general in the world, we're just busy. So I could see people not wanting to go to the doctor's office, especially for something that the doctor doesn't really need to do, like a deep scan, like let's say they have to look inside your ear or something. I'm sure they can probably even tell that you have an ear infection with just the symptoms you tell them. And so I was like, this trend could be bigger. And so obviously the natural thing is like you have your capitalist hat on. You're like, oh, this could be something I want to invest in. And so the first thing you do, or at least what I do, is I pop onto like Google Trends and see what kind of data can I see that backs up my thought process. That's the number one thing. I want to look for like data that will back up my thought process. So I go in, trends.google.com, pop in just the common things that you would pop in. Like if someone was searching, right, you're like, oh, how do I log into Teladoc? So Teladoc login, boom. Big spike, 12 months. Okay, that's pretty obvious. During the pandemic, no one really wanted to go see the doctor. But you zoom out in a 5-year period, trends still upticking slowly. And then you just type in all the other things around Teladoc, like, just Teladoc website, all that. So all the things it added up that like people are looking up Teladoc. Then I type in telemedicine, same thing. People are looking for telemedicine. And then the next thing is there, like, what's the user experience? Like, is there good reviews for people that are using it? You go on Google, you go find some doctors that are in that Teladoc system, and you say, yeah, some really positive reviews for people that have that same thing. Saved me so much time. This was great. And then some people's like, I never got an answer back. So there is a mix, but in general, it favored the positivity. So, okay, like, great, we're getting a trend here. This sparked this idea. Now I got this idea. Now I see the rotation shift, right? We're seeing from value, some growth to value. So everyone's dumping out of growth stocks going to value. There are still people that are buying it. So next thing, you kind of want to be on the side of the billionaires, or the billionaires that you kind of follow or you favor. Okay, everyone knows Kathy's going to be in Teladoc. She favors growth. She's got massive boatloads of money, and she's willing to wait the 10-year trend or whatever that it gets there. So then I go, okay, what about like a traditional like investor lower risk? So I start going through a website's the 13F forms, start Googling and find that, hey, Ray Dalio, he's adding Teladoc too. So you got a little bit of balance, right? This guy's not ultra growth oriented, but he's starting to think Teladoc. So now I'm on the right path. I'm starting to experiment and start going to see if the data like adds up. Like, are other people thinking the same way? Is the trend showing me what other billionaires are kind of thinking in the same way that I am thinking? The next thing is the obvious thing, where it's like, okay, what is the US spending on healthcare? So I found something from 2017. $3.5 trillion was spent, $10,000 per person. Then I zoomed in out a bit more because I want to get the international viewpoint. So basically the global health industry. And I found a stat from 2018, which was sitting at 8.5 trillion. And you can see, at least from the data that was shown in Google and shown on all the medical related data sites, that this healthcare industry in general is climbing. And that's partly due to like our lifestyles. So this is like an obvious thing, but like it just reassures your epiphany moment. Like, okay, are generally people getting healthier? It doesn't seem like people are getting healthier. It seems like people are getting more unhealthier. Though we're living longer, but that could be partly due to like the healthcare system where we're pumping ourselves more into drugs. So we may be living longer, but is the quality of life longer? Are we just struggling? Anyway, side topic, but something that I was looking into. Then I roll back into it and think, okay, now this is a behavior shift. So COVID-19 has made this particular behavior a new norm. And you go and you start looking at more data and you see like, hey, we're getting into a society where we're becoming more germophobic. And we're becoming a society that is more time sensitive, or, you know, I want my time back because I don't have so much of it during the day. Like days for me, and I think generally seem smaller for everybody. It's just we have to fit a lot in. And you throw on TikTok or you throw on anything and you're getting bombarded from marketing, from whatever. You have your 9 to 5, but that's not enough. To really be successful in life, you need to have a side hustle. And you need to be doing so many things on the side so that you can retire sooner, all that etc. stuff. And they sell you this fantasy. But anyways, a lot of people are bought into that fantasy. So now that means that we want convenience. So that's where telemedicine kind of fits in. So I can work a 9 to 5. I don't want to go pop and wait 2 hours in a waiting room. I don't want to be infected by people. We're a germaphobe society, so more and more people would rather see the doctor, especially if it's something small and they just think, hey, you could probably write me an antibiotic or a script over the phone. Why do I need to go see you? And at least that triggers something in the sense that, like, if there is something more, he'll just tell you to go in, versus you go in, they're like, oh, I wasted 2 hours and he just gave me a script, like, annoying. So that trend is like, that's obvious. And then the next thing I started looking into is like, how is Teladoc growing? Like, are they having blowout quarters? And what's this reason of this sell-off? So this is what I got here so far. And so I can't really see there's a reason that they're selling off, minus that the US like member number isn't growing crazy. So we can see that the growth has to come internationally. But the revenue per customer is growing. So that's pretty healthy. And you can see here that, let me kind of go back and look at the Q1 results here. So the main headline for the Q1 growth was 150% revenue growth to about 450 million. And then their guiding for Q2 is 500 million. So there is guidance there. And then they had an organic growth of about 70%. And the company thinks that they can continue growing at a 30 to 40% rate. And so they're still not like profitable, but I told you that the healthcare market or the healthcare sector is in the trillions. And I've seen a few articles saying that the TAM for telemedicine is somewhere around 150 billion to 500 billion. So it's kind of like an emerging market. Like, we've always known that this was going to go, but are we getting accelerated? So the data is linking to us that we are getting to that point. So that was like the first thing. Then I went a little bit deeper here and started looking at the gigification of this market, and are doctors going to be pro for gigifying their job, or potentially other streams of revenue? So let's say they have, I don't know, half an hour per patient booked in, and they have some slots in between where there's no patient, because sometimes there's times where no one can fit those times. Let's say from 1 to 3 everyone's at work, or nobody wants it. So the doctors that are signed up for Teladoc have an open window where they can potentially service patients or take consultations in between there. So that makes sense, and the doctors that are doing it, they seem to be satisfied with that. The other thing that I started looking is like, where are the competition? So there's Amazon, Walmart, and that experience. And so could they potentially take away from that market share? And now with Teladoc, they've done 2 good acquisitions. They did Advanced Medical, which kind of, what I understand, and comment below if I'm wrong, is where they got access to like the employer market. And the next thing was Livongo, and that where they got members from there, and they gained information from like a data-centric possibility, from a like data-centric data mining and more data there. So those 2 acquisitions kind of made them leader and strengthened their position in the telemedicine market. It doesn't mean that Amazon can't spend their way out of it. It's just they're the leader, and so far the user experiences lead to that positivity, and I think they'll continue growing. And so for a little bit more context, if we just start looking at from a stock standpoint of view, the stock was from a PS ratio pre-COVID was trading between like 6 to 8. With the COVID hype and everyone realizing that we're going to use telemedicine, I think it shot up all the way to 25, and the stock was like trading at 250. The stock is selling off like crazy. That's nothing to do with the stock that I can see. Maybe that people are not so happy with the US member being stagnant. And now it's trading about $140, and we're sitting at a price per sales ratio at about 11. And so if we can get down to like the 8s, we're getting to the PS ratio of what it was trading at pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, this is the normal way to behave, a new culture, new way to book, more people that have gone through this user experience, more people that are likely to rebook. So that seems like a good time to start taking a bet if we think this is going to start being a long-term play. So next thing is like, what are the pros? And I think the pros are pretty obvious. Convenient, accessible patient care. So with the combination of that and a way for the governments to service rural areas. So like in North America, like in Canada and the US, we have a lot of rural areas where there's not that many doctors there. And so if the telemedicine could at least factor in, like fit in that part of the growth plan, saying like, okay, we only have 1 doctor for this small town, but they have access to all these teledoctors, and so that's fine, right? And so there's that. And then we have a combination of technology where Elon's bringing Starlink to rural areas, so now we have access there. So that's one pro that I can see going on. And then healthcare in general is expensive. So the cost is coming down lower because they can potentially have more patients throughput, and it'll probably be a decent saving. Right now, it seems like the telemedicine program has saved about 11% in cost, and I'm sure with technology that could be even more savings, right? Now, we've kind of talked about the pros and a lot, and is there a con to this? So the con is a lot of competition. Can the big players like Amazon and Walmart and some other small players come and put a grapple on it? And I think so. That's a possibility of con. But the total healthcare market seems huge in the trillions. So there could be a lot of players here. That doesn't mean that we should be sloppy. It just means that we want to get a real bargain for this thing. We want to make sure that the stock sells off credibly to the point that even the numbers that they're putting now is not even priced into the stock. And I think we could potentially get that, especially where now we're getting panic sellers of people rotating from a growth to value. So this is a possibility, like I said, price per sales ratio coming closer to what we were having pre-pandemic levels. The other con I see is the reduced care continuity. So what I mean by that is, so okay, remember when you would go to the doctor, let's say your doctor's name is Bill. So I go, hey Bill, how's it going? I'm here for this. It's like, hey man, how you doing? How's the kids? How's the wife? You have that little thing, and then like, oh, next time you see him, like, hey, oh, your daughter's this year's this. Oh, wow, she's growing up, right? So you have like this little personal bond, and then they know like your history. They know last time you've went to see them. They're part of your community, so you may see them in town. Like a small side story, like my parents still send their doctors a Christmas card, a box of chocolate on every holiday, right? Because they have that relationship, and they'll continue doing that. So we might see the culture shift potentially for the younger demographic, maybe not for the older. So that's another con, right? And so you lose the warmth part. So like going to the doctor or seeing the doctor is already an awkward situation, right? But at least you get warmed up by the small talk. They know you. They know your healthcare, the whole record, right? And it's just, you want to go to the same doctor because you build relationship. So now you're getting a thing where you're probably going to be potentially assigned a random one at each time. And so where they have your information from the past, plus it's a very sterile, like get to the point, problem solving like exercise. It's like, oh, this is wrong, give me a solution, get out. And then, like I said, do they have all your information about the previous guy, or if you went to a clinic locally, and then do they have all that? So like, do we have all those connections so that people don't fall through the cracks? So I think that's a risk or something that we need to factor in, right? But again, some people just want to be in and out, like time saving. I don't want to chit chat, I just want to go in. But some people do. So that's a con in the whole thing, because as we get extracted away, it feels more robotic. And I'm not sure if that's going to potentially, people are going to love that user experience. But that's something they have to improve on. That user experience is what people are going to keep going to this back and forth. Anyways, that's my first thought for this big trade. I'm going to continue watching if it sells off. And if it gets to like the low 100s, I'm going to potentially nibble. If it gets to 89, 70, I'm going to start nibbling. And as long as I see those trends, and as long as I see that there's no risks to get this. So, we want like the Dondo kind of idea. It's like heads I win, tails I don't lose very much. So we need the price point to sell off to an incredible point where we're getting a bargain basement price here for this. So those are our initial rough thoughts of a big trade that potentially could be panning out in the market, that has a little bit of a oomph of something that the trend just started and made a new norm during the pandemic, and potentially will continue on in the future. From time saving, cost savings, etc., what I've laid out. Anyways, final thought, I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own DD. If you could smash the like button and the subscribe button, that will help the YouTube algorithm to help me grow. And thanks for listening.